Hey everybody, it's June 4th, 2024. Uh, Wanted to go over a pretty good size update that I just published to the MojoPivots. If you don't have the MojoPivots, you can get them for free currently by going to the Discord, and I'll give you those details here in a little bit. But I want to go over some of the major uh, updates. First of all, you'll see if you're used to the MojoPivots, you'll see that there's an extra zone here, and that zone is called the MS3. It's just MS2, MS1, and we're already familiar with the line in the sand and the first two zones, but we added a third one, and we've got the statistics to accompany that extra zone there. And so I just wanted to kind of make this to where anybody that's new to the MojoPivots could kind of catch on and get the grasp of kind of get the idea of what we're doing with them. And but not only that, but like get you up to speed on the extra zone there. So the main thing, if you're used to this, is the extra zone. So, but we're going to start from scratch here and go over what everything is and make sure everybody that's watching this video can kind of understand what we're doing. So, um, basically, we have the line in the sand, which is the orange line you see there. That's what we call the line in the sand. So if we're above there, if we're above the line in the sand, we're bullish sentiment. We have a bullish sentiment, and if we're below it, we have a bearish sentiment. So you'll see, a lot of times there's a lot of reaction around the line in the sand. So you'll see it bounce above it and then come back and test it, go below it, come back and test it again, yada yada. So it's below it and then it'll come back and test it and then breaks above it and come back and test it. And a lot of times you'll see it go back and test one of the zones. So you see it break above it there, it tests the zone, reject off of it, then go back below it, test the zone, come back up, break above it, kind of test the zone, fail, and you see this all the time. So that's the reason we have this, and it's a very good tool. And not only do you have the visual of it, you also have the statistics behind every single thing that we're watching here. So that's the main thing. So we have the statistics are MR1, MR2, MR1 and MS2. See MR1, MS2. That's the first levels there, above and below the line in the sand. Then you have MR2 and MS2. That's the second lines, above and below the line in the sand. Then you have MR3, MS3. That's the third line that we just added, above and below the line in the sand. So as you can imagine, that we have the line in the sand, the further extended above the line in the sand, the better the statistics are in our favor for some kind of trade setup or some kind of rejection or whatever. So we want to study, trading is a numbers game, statistics game, probabilities game, however you want to say it. But so what we have in the statistics categories is a touch greater than MR1. Then we have a close greater than MR1. So what that means is if we have a touch and that ends up going past the MR1, then it calculates that statistic. And so it's calculating against, in this case, 2-hour periods. So it's analyzing 567 2-hour periods. So over 1,000 hours. So 567 2-hour periods is what? 1,000 or 1,120, basically 1,134 2-hour 1-hour periods. So over 1,100 hours is what it's analyzing. So over the last 1,100 hours, is what it's calculating the statistics off of. And so so over those 1,100 hours, only 38% of the time did it touch the MR1, which is this line right here, that first line above the 2-hour period. I mean above the line in the sand. It's been a long day. So 38% of the time did it touch it and then blow above it, just blow through it and get above it. So 38% of the time it did that. So furthermore, basically 20% of the time did it close. Okay, so we know that 38% of the time it blew above it. It blew through it and got above it. So what is the statistic behind, did it actually close within that 2-hour period? So right here and right here, so you can see right here, it says 1,300 hours to basically 1,500 hours. That's 2 hours. So within that 2-hour period in this particular zone, did it close above the MR1? So basically 20% of the time it blew up through it and it touched it and went greater than the MR1. And then so that 38% of the time it did that, and then only 19%, so basically half. So half of the time it blew through there, and then by the end of that 2-hour period, only half of the time did it close above there. So another way to show this is, see, I'm only on a 3-minute chart here. So what we can do is actually, since we're analyzing 2-hour period time frames, we can actually switch over to a 2-hour time frame. And we can actually look at it a little easier. This is the 2-hour time frame chart. And it's the same thing going on here. So let's try to find a place where it actually blew through. So it blew through there, and it closed above the MR1. So same thing here, blew through and closed above. So then we got the next one that blew through and closed above. So this is a really strong market right here. So as you can see in the statistics, we have a lot more data on the 2-hour time frame. So instead of what we had before, it's 22,700 2-hour periods. So you get a lot more data by kind of mining this down. So on the 2-hour time frame, we had 22,000 out of those 22,000 2-hour bars that are analyzed. You go way further back, right? So we touched it and moved greater than it 75% of the time. That's why you're seeing all this extra, like blowing through it and staying above it, right? It's accommodating for 20. Now it's going 22,700 2-hour periods. That's what, 45,000 1-hour periods. So over 45,000 hours. You got a lot of data there. So you can see it touched it and blew through it 75% of the time. And then it closed greater than this first line here 48% of the time. It touched it and blew through it 43% of the time. It closed greater than the second line 25.9% of the time. So you can see the statistics keep getting better and better. So it touched it and blew through it. The third line 24% of the time. Like, this is an example of that. So I touched it and blew through it 24% of the time. And then it only closed above it, greater than MR3, 14% of the time, over 4,500 hours. It only closed above it 14% of the time. This is an example of that. So it touched it. We're talking about the third line there. It touched it right here, moved greater than it, blew through it, right, and then came right back down to close below it. And that happened. The only time it did that, only time it blew through it and stayed up here, like basically closed above there, was 14% of the time. So if you're looking at the probabilities, right, you can adjust this any way you want to. This is just the default. But you can, like, if you're like looking for trade setups, or you're trying to design a system and you're trying to look for statistics and see what works and what doesn't work, that's really nice to know that price only moved above here and stayed above here and closed within this 2-hour time frame only 14% of the time. That's pretty powerful information to know. Right, same thing right here. Let's look at this, and this is all candid. I'm not. This is not pre-scripted or anything. I'm just looking at the charts like you are. But let's look at right here. Like price blew through MR or MS1, blew through there and blew below it. But look what happened right here. Look at the statistic behind this. It only closed below there within this 2-hour time frame right here. This 2-hour time frame right here. Let's see if I can draw like a trend line. Within that 2-hour time frame right there, if you can see that, it only closed below there 1.6% of the time over 4,500 hours. That's a lot of data. It would take you a long time to try to analyze that. It only closed below there 1.6% of the time. So if you're looking for a rejection, for it to blow through there, and we can even set this up to have an alert. Okay, well, we blew through the MS1, or the MS3. We blew through there, and I know that I have greater than a 98% of the time, 98% chance of that rejecting off of there and then coming up at least above MS3, that lower line there. Who cares if it gets below there? I know that I have greater than a 98% chance that it comes back up and gives me a profitable trade, at least above here. That is basically the secret sauce to these Mojo pivots here. So I just kind of wanted to give a breakdown of that, and hope it helps y'all. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on the Discord. There'll be a link in this video. You can just click the link and join the free Discord. It doesn't cost you anything. Just jump on in there, and you'll you'll have a good time. There's some great people in there. So if you need anything, just reach out to me on Discord. Click the link or whatever. Join up and shoot me a DM or post on the trade floor or something. And we'll see if we can help you. All right. Thanks. Bye.